So please welcome Liliana Fortna to the show. Welcome, Liliana.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh my gosh, you're so cute. You are so welcome. Thank you so much for coming into my life. We know there's no coincidences, there's no accidents, there's nothing. And when I'm looking at you on this computer, this was destined to happen. And I know that, even though we can have technical things happen, I knew sitting here waiting for you, I I have to explain to you what I've been going through since I came into your or you came into my life. So I have your Audible book. I don't have the actual physical book. So I do my walks in the morning with my dogs, and that's like my meditation. And here I am listening to this book. I know it's not your voice, so it's hard for me to like now connect with you because it's you have the reader. But Liliane, I think I cried today. Gosh, I could still cry right now. You touched me in a way that I'm I want your book to be a movie. I want I have two teenagers and I have a class for teenagers, and I want what you want is I know parents have reached out to you and wanted you to create something from this book for kids. Every exercise you have in the journal or in the back in the workbook is part of my class. I mean, every single one
Oh, wow.
is it. I kept going, oh, okay, that I do that. Everything that I do have done for my children, pages 17 and Presley's 14, you mention in that exercise. And I incorporated those things that I think are so important into
Mhm.
this 8-week class that I call Raising Confidence.
Oh,
So I listened to this, oh, your story. I have to, at least for people that haven't had the magical experience like I have listening to this book. I mean, I don't know if when I hear a story where it touches me so much and I feel your innocence as a child and what you've gone through, and then I see I always talk about breadcrumbs, but I see your life unfold and you always saying yes and moving forward, and me having children and thinking, oh gosh, like not to really have a mother and a grandmother that really is abusive and no friends and just animals and nature. I mean, see, it kind of gets me all choked up. But gosh, Liliane, I want you to um go to just your childhood so people kind of get what I got. Like, it just makes you realize, even though your childhood was in that way and why it brought me to such like this emotion, it was all perfect. It was exactly what was supposed to be.
mhm.
People can say, "Oh, I had a hard childhood and I wasn't loved and I didn't have a mom," or all the things, abuse. Um, but when you can look at it from a higher perspective, and especially as a mom myself, it gives me the confidence or the ability to see and know that my girls are always being led, and the worry part of a mom can dissipate a little bit more by even hearing your story more. Like, I've always believed in signs, and I mean, my girls grew up with angel numbers and, all the things. We've made vision boards our entire life. They have in this closet stacks of vision boards, stacks of gratitude journals. Like, we've done it all the things that you see.
Oh, so wonderful.
So I want to say, like, when you take us on this journey that I really feel like is important before we get into I don't know, just a little of these synchronicity stories, but I want them to feel that depth of the character that you came to play really in this life. Like, you came to play this part, and it just evolved into this beautiful life of really the the way to show people. You came here to show people that everything is always working for you. There's always people, there's always something protecting you. There's always winks from the winks from above, winks from right here. You're never alone. And it just confirms that even more by reading your book and your story. And it's absolutely incredible. And I'm beyond blessed. And I mean that, to be in your presence. I really am. You've touched me so much. So take us to where you want, and then we'll kind of, meander through Liliana's life.
Well, something just pops to mind as the signs coming to us. Sometimes they're for things that seems irrelevant, and yet a week and a half ago, so I'll start by that latest one, we were packing to go see my husband's family in Illinois. And as we were in the process of, putting things in suitcase, choosing what we want to wear, then a phone call from one of his sisters to tell us that one nephew just passed.
Oh, wow.
And, at first it was, oh my God. And then I said, it comes at the right time. I mean, the news is horrible, but it comes at the right time because I like to wear things that are a little bit colorful. And so I was able to revise my whole wardrobe for 1 week, putting things that would not be a bit offensive, or, when people are grieving, you need something a bit more muted. So I was able to do that. I said, thank you, guys.
Right.
Those are things that are not necessarily happy, but they're very useful. And it happens all the time. But coming back to my childhood now, since you started by that, I did not see or understand what was happening until much later in life. I did not, because as a child, I did not have anybody to talk with, and I was raised in a very Catholic environment. So even if I said something, it would have been very poorly received. So I never spoke about, my encounters, talking to trees, that animal who came to help. I mean, all these things that happened to me all the time. Um, the only thing that really remained when I grew up is that anger I had deep inside towards those who hurt me, because I reached a point where, reading books, where I could discover families around the world and how they lived, and I didn't have any of that. Or, talking to other girls. I was always in a school, girl in the school, talking to other girls, the way they lived and the way I lived was so different. So I became very angry, especially during my teenagehood, because I wanted to really have somebody, a woman, to talk with about matters of, growing up as a girl.
Right.
Um, I was in boarding school with the nuns, and I would say they were very kind, but there were things I would not dare to talk about. Um, so I became really very angry not to be able to call my mother and say, hey, I'm going for this. What do you think I should do? Or, have somebody like that. I always had to rely on myself. So I became extremely angry, and that did not change until much later in life, when I was in my 40s, I would say, when I had a major depression. Actually, I gave into that depression because it was there for quite a few years, but I was already, depression is for sissies. I'm much stronger than that.
Mm-hmm.
It was something that would never cross my mind. I'm strong enough. And actually, no, there were things inside me eating me. So until I realized that, I still had that anger, but I would follow guidance without knowing what I was doing. It was part of my intuition, part of survival, it was a habit I had. Um, so when I had the illness that really triggered me to write the book to help people, um, I um, I changed entirely, um, because suddenly I realized, after discovering what I should do for that illness and being very, I would not say lucky because I was well guided, it was just great, wonderful. And I wish for everybody to have that ability to to talk to guides, to talk to their angel, to ask for guidance, because it really helped me. So since I spent 29 days in the hospital, I had plenty of time to think and write. And I couldn't go very far because I was hooked all along to a feeding pouch with a tube going through my nose into my stomach. So I couldn't run away.
Right.
So I thought of myself as being so lucky. I mean, to have found the perfect doctor. And then I thought about my life and I said, well, you had a lot of luck all along. So let's revise the word luck. How did that happen? And then I thought of so many episodes and what was wrong. And I said, oh my God, you were guided. And so I started to think and try to connect, and it did happen. I had guidance and I had to study a little bit more so I could pass that on to others. And that's how I started to write my book, by jotting down a lot of stories that were coming to my mind. And the more I was studying those stories, the more I discovered that I was guided. And I made a choice because I could have done this or that or that. And I chose that, which led me here, etc. I said, I want everybody to have that because we all are born with the connection
Right.
that we lose when we go to school, basically. When we start sharing with other children, we feel that maybe we shouldn't share certain things, or that's childish. That's when I was a little kid, or so I just I knew I was guided all along, and I knew that everybody has that ability. So, how do I convey that to people? And so I wrote a book, and now I'm in the process of starting. Funny, because you said you have an 8-week course. I'm planning an 8-week, maybe 7. I have a lot of material based on my book to teach people how to see, recognize, and use the signs and messages that they are receiving. And there are lots of things to do. One of the first things to do is unblock ourselves, because we have so many blockages that prevent us from seeing the signs. For instance, ego. Ego, you see a sign that, no, that's not for me. I already know that. Or you're scared, or there are so many reasons why we turn our back to those signs. However, they're so helpful if we allow them to guide us. It's wonderful. We can do so much more in life, be so much happier. And when we're happier, we spread happiness around as well.
Right.
So this is what I want to do. And um, as you were mentioning, parents asked me to write a book for children using the same messages. So I thought about that and I said, I'm going to write a series. And
Mm.
I for which age group, probably young children who can read, I mean, at the beginning. And then another one for teenagers. So that would be like a novel for teenagers, but with a lot of my messages, something that the kids could read and say, oh, yeah, that's right, I'm like that. Or
Right.
and so start with the children and then grown up and everybody. And some people read my book here in the town where I live. And afterwards, they asked me, when are you going to teach? And I said, okay, you're my beta group. so, so I started with them, which is good because it helps me build the online classes that I want to offer.
Right.
So I'm in that process right now. I thought the book would be written and then this is it. I just push it and I do something else. And because I'm an introverted, so even speaking with somebody I don't know is a little bit difficult for me. So go out there and speak in public is, oh my God, but I'm ready to do it. I already
You
have to
are.
ahead of time when in the university, and oh my God, I'm not going to sleep for 3 days before I go. I'm
Oh,
so nervous.
no. I want to, so I think I want to start with a little bit more of like how, like with your grandmother, because she
Mhm.
was like she wouldn't let you have friends, and you walked across the street to the beach, you'd hear the seagulls, and the crows are your animal, your spirit animal, and the dog that would walk you, and
That's
it's
good.
all, but I feel, because I have two dogs and I've always had dogs, and it made me really think of dogs that I've had in my life at certain times. It's like they're like these little angels, these guides that come, and you made that come alive more in my mind. And so, even your frogs and your pond, it's just, I love, it's people realizing, sometimes, especially like I say all the time, being a mom, it's like, life is, for, let's say, you get to teenage years, and it becomes this, it's like, what do we have to be? Who do we have to be for that person? Now I have to figure out college. What am I going to do? I have to, there's so many, especially these days growing up with the social media and all, there's so much more than when we were playing outside, and coming back for dinner, right?
Mhm.
And I think of that so much, but I feel like there's so much pressure. And when you understand that you're only making that pressure within your mind, it doesn't have to be. And you
Mhm.
can look at it from the magical, uncovering your magic every day. And that's all I talk about, is seeing the magic. And
Mhm.
the girls have to send me their magic moments. And in the journals, it's like, what was, who did you give a magic moment to, complimenting, or, making someone happy or smile.
Mhm.
So, and these kids don't get that. And it's where it's like, we need to have them remember their power, and the
Mhm.
unlimitlessness that they have, that they are, there's no limits. And
Yeah.
it's so fun to watch you discover life through things that people would look at as, oh, poor Liliane, like, oh, that, all, oh geez, and then she went to a boarding school, and oh my gosh. And then I just look at how, you wanted to commit suicide. There's I think you checked all the boxes.
Well, yes, very interesting life. Lots of up and many downs as well, but lots of ups. And once I made peace with myself, um, once I got over my depression, and I was so lucky, there was also synchronicity right there, because I never heard of a place where they treat depression via art. This is exactly where I was. I was taken to the emergency at first because it was getting very dangerous. So, and then they would observe me, and I was quite sedated. But then they put me in a place for artists, and they gave me the choice. I was actually 50 at that time, and they didn't give me the choice. They put me with a 30 years old
Oh,
group, which
right.
was perfectly fine for me because of the activities were the activities I wanted to do. So it was fantastic, and every day we had the choice of painting, music, writing, and sculpting, etc., modeling, clay. And we would have to leave everything into the art room because a psychiatrist following us would come and see how we would progress.
Hmm.
So it was really something fantastic. And all the art teacher was also trained in psychology. So it was just a fantastic place with a beautiful park around where once I was better, I could go by myself, otherwise I was escorted. Um, so it was fantastic. When I thought of that, I said, oh my God, that's unbelievable. Never heard of that. And that's where I was. That's where suddenly I reconnect with a little girl, with the artist, with everything I had been. But I was moving away from it because I was depressed, and I was all that strength to fight depression was taken away from my creativity. So yeah, it was just fantastic to be able to reconnect with who I am. But it was a very, very difficult time because for many years I hid. I was putting a brave face. I would be out there, doing all kinds of things. People would say, "Oh God, look at her heart, look at the way she dresses, the way, and deep inside I was dying. So
Hmm.
you can, it allows me to understand people too, to go through all that, because sometimes who you see is not exactly who the person is or the way the person is feeling. So I'm always a bit careful and use,
Right.
other means of feeling the person.
Right. So when you so what my feeling is from you, like you connected with nature when you were little, and then you connected to like the art, the story of when you were in Paris and you'd go to the Louvre on Sundays and when it was free and you'd go see you'd have it all mapped out. Not many people were there, but you'd study all the art and you'd become it would it would become your like therapy, like you would really look at these pictures and become that. Will you explain that? I love that because we just were at the Louvre last summer, not this one, but the
Um,
last.
it has changed some things have
Yes.
moved around since they built the pyramid. But anyway, yes, because I did not have nature around me, which fed my soul, really. Um, or when I felt very sad, I would go and hide in nature, and I felt the warmth of nature. It was like the trees would embrace me, or the wherever, like at night, I would sit on a rock, I would look at the immensity of the sky, the stars, etc. And I would feel that the sky was wrapping me
Mm,
into its arm, and I felt so much warmer. And it was so wonderful to be able to immerse myself in the beauty surrounding me. So that was fantastic. Art is very close to that in the sense that it feeds the soul. And because of that, I was able to continue the type of connections I had when I was a child, because um, I would see beyond the painting. For instance, I would see a painting, but sometimes I would go inside the painting, go beyond,
mm.
or sit there and see more or imagine. Or sometimes I would feel some of the people would come out of the painting and escort me, and I would silently talk to them. so, so it was really uh, very soothing, very helpful for me to go through my teenage years, because I was a loner. Um, I was invited a couple of times to be with a group of very nice people, but I was bored. I didn't speak the same language. They talked about things I was absolutely not interested in.
Hmm.
I wanted to talk about art, about, different things, and they just wanted to talk about things that were, yeah, that's nice. I can talk about it 5 minutes, but then I'm bored. so
Right.
I only went a couple of times, and I always found a way to know. So I would go back to the Louvre or other places that I really loved, because it would soothe my soul. It would nourish me at the same time. One thing that I did for my son, and I think it would be very good for children to do. I wanted to take him to a museum when he was little. I'm talking about 6, 7 years old, and you know how kids are in museum, right?
Hmm.
So I said, well, maybe there is something I can do. I'm going to organize a game, all right? So at night, I would read to him passages of the Bible, the Old and the New Testament, because that's what you see in painting, typically, until the 15th century. I mean, in the Western art. Then from the 15th century on, you see a lot of paintings inspired by the Greek mythology. So I bought a book of Greek mythology for children, because if it's a real book, woohoo, it's a little bit, those gods are a bit naughty. So we don't need that for children. so I had these two books, and at night I would choose one or two stories to read to him. And that was maybe a couple of weeks before we went to a museum. So I knew which paintings we were going to see. So I would
Hmm.
read stories. Then we would arrive in the museum and say, okay, in this room, you should be able to find, let's say, the flight to Egypt or the Tower of Babel, or whatever. So you look, 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 look. and then he would find it.
Yeah.
And then it did not end there. Oh, but this was not in the story you told me. Or then suddenly his imagination would 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 come out, and then he would tell me, and this is what happens, and then he would go inside the painting, and and I would encourage that because I used to do that. So that was really fantastic because he would use his imagination. He did not mind to go to a museum after that because he realized that it's fun to look at paintings, especially if you know the stories behind.
Right.
So and then it would be hands-on. Sometimes I would have a mirror to look at the ceiling, or when the guards were not around, I said, lay down, would see until they you're not allowed. Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know.
Oh, cute.
Because for my child, it was fun to do that.
Right.
I could remember I lay down in a museum.
Right.
So we would do all kinds of things, and it was really so helpful to him. And when he was 20 or so, we received a cousin from the US. We took her to the Louvre, and she wanted to see the Impressionists. So I said, no, they are not here now. They are at the Orsay Museum. But she wanted to know more about the Impressionists, so I was going to speak. My son started to speak. And he answered all her questions. And I was,
Oh, wow.
oh my God, he remembers.
That's amazing.
These type of things are a lot of fun to do with children.
Hmm.
And at the same time, it introduces them to something they don't always have the chance to learn, at school or so.
Right.
So,
I wish I had heard your story before we took the girls to, well, I told you we went to Paris last summer, and this summer we went to Rome, and it's always like another museum. So if I would have made it fun like that and had them learn all of that before, they probably would have had that, well, hopefully a part of that experience that your son did.
well, in a few years from now, you're going to be a grandma. And
A
guess what?
what?
A grandma.
In a few years? Oh
It's
gosh,
okay. It's
Liliane.
okay. It's okay. I'm a grandma. I love it.
Yes.
And I do all
Uh,
kinds of things. One little thing I did for my granddaughter, it's not in the book. She was afraid of sting bugs. And she wanted to play outside where there was a sting bug walking through the grass. And I said, well, there is something we can do. Put your hands on your heart. Okay, so she did. I said, now close your eyes. She did. I said, can you see the sting bug in your head? Mm-hmm. I said, you can talk to her, You can tell her that she's pretty. First of all, tell her she's pretty, but you're scared of her. And you want to play here for just a little while. Maybe she could. And at that time, the ladybug was moving away. So I said,
oh,
open your eyes. And she was 4 years old at the time. You know how cute little kids are when they're,
yes.
oh. So I
Cute.
said, from now on, you can do that with almost anything. Something you don't like, close your eyes. And I gave her little tricks, to. So yeah, I'm starting with her to do little things like
Yeah.
that will help her, because they have so much imagination at that time that it's easy for us to guide them
Right.
where,
Well,
they.
you had so much imagination. I mean, you take that sentence to the next level because you had to in your childhood.
Well, it was survival.
Right.
Like food, I didn't have food sometimes, but I went on the beach, and there were rocks, and there were oysters, and mussels, and all kinds of things that I could have a knife that I hid, and I would eat. And there was a tap in the garden with water, so I would go and drink over there because I was not allowed sometimes even to drink, especially when it was hot. That was my
Right.
punishment. So, you find ways. And when you don't know anything else, well, of course, it's uncomfortable to be hungry, to be thirsty, but when you don't know anything else, you just, find your way out of that. If you
Right.
compare, that's when you become very miserable.
Right.
Well, me. So it's only later that I reached that. But as a child, no, I would just, or the crows, I could hear them going one way. So I would run out on the beach. And typically usually there were squids that landed in the sand. A few times fish, but usually squids, and they were still alive. So I would run. A few of the crows would move away. I would grab one or two squids and run back.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so things like that.
But you
That
didn't compare. You didn't compare. You weren't
well,
like,
no, whatever you don't know, you don't suffer of. Like
right.
not having a mother. It's later when I compared. Why don't I have a mother? You know,
Hmm.
you can't really compare. But one thing that is extremely important that I want to stress to anyone, it's not only to forgive that it's important to whatever happened in life, to whoever hurt you. It's very, very important to forgive, because if you don't, you do suffer. And sometimes these people are gone. They're dead, they're gone. So why do you make yourself suffer?
Right.
So as you were saying, change your mindset. And I reached a point when where I not only um, forgive them, but I also thank them, because I would not be who I am today.
Right.
You know, each difficulty in life is a step that you can step on
Hmm.
to ascend. So, yeah, I don't wish necessarily for the children to have the type of life I had, but whenever we have difficulties, I look at it as, what is it trying to teach now as an adult? What is it trying to teach me? And when I was a child, these were steps I had to ascend um, to reach a life that I have now. And now I'm able to teach. And I want to convey that to people, because I've been there. People will come to me and say, oh, I had this and that. And I can understand.
Hmm.
You know, I became um, about 15 years ago, I became a healer as well.
Right.
Um, that helps me tremendously to help others.
Right.
But I
But
refuse.
you were asked to be a healer like that was the third time, right? And
Yeah,
you didn't
yeah.
let's talk about your healing. Yeah, your
Well, for every year, like in Brittany and some parts of France, people did not used to go to a doctor. Every village or town had healers, and we would go to see the healer, and it was a different lifestyle, because at the time um, there was no money exchanged.
hmm.
Come with maybe a box of fruits or vegetables or chicken or a bottle of wine or something like that, and that was it. And the healer I knew, who lived down the street from us, and he and his wife were about the only people I would see periodically. And that's also a synchronicity, I think, for my life. They
Hmm.
were they were kind to me, and I was allowed to stay whenever somebody came, because everything was so natural. It's not, oh, I have to have a special room for healing. No, you open the door. That was the kitchen, dining room. That's where they live. Like in the old town, like in the US, where you only had one room basically, and people would come, and typically I would be on the floor with the dog, so I would be very silent. And he would do healing. He never touched people. He would simply do his healing. And so I learned a lot when I became a healer, to not fall into traps of too many things to do before you heal. It's something very organic in many ways, because we deal with energy. Everybody has energy. Energy is all around. That's what we tap into. So it's something very natural, not something I have to pray to this and that and bow 3 times. And, it's fine. Some people might need that. But I learned a way that is very, very natural, and it's part of life. So that's how that's how I studied. I found a shaman who taught me, and he always told me, I'm not your teacher. I'm facilitating your learning. I'm transmitting my knowledge. And you do what you want with it. You take what's important for you. You add also things that are important to you for healing. And that way you have a bag that is your own. It's not you learn from somebody and you will have to say according to, or no.
Right.
So I study with two different people like that, and that was fantastic because each time is okay, now your turn. Um, so I had a very different way to learn energy healing. Now, when I came to the States, everybody was asked, what type of healing do you do? And I was traditional healing, which meant nothing to people. So I decided to learn Reiki. I became Reiki master and teacher. So that way I can say, yes, I'm a Reiki master.
Right.
And if they want more details, I said, well, I do things that I learned before that is similar to Reiki, so they can follow. But there is that need sometimes of people to know exactly where you learn whatever you know. So, but yeah. So when I saw the healer the very first time, um, he asked, he sensed that I had the capability to become a healer, and he wanted to push that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very, honored because he's a quite known healer in France. But I was very scared because I had seen my grandmother who had that capability, but she was not using it in the right way. I saw
Right.
her do nasty things. Um,
Wait. Hold on a second. So when you were little and she raised you and she was so abusive, when you say she was healing, that's in your lineage like that.
yes, well, oftentimes it is traditionally in France and many other countries, I'm sure. Oftentimes it's passed on from grandparents or parents to one of the children. It's passed on.
Right.
Okay. Now, because it's a practice that is much more, people are much more open to that. So more people want to learn, even though they don't know somebody. So that's where it's different. If you do 50 years ago, you didn't have schools per se
Right.
for healing. Reiki existed, but other than that, you didn't have schools. People did not teach. They passed on. They transferred their knowledge.
But what
Um,
explain your grandmother's abuse, like how she abused the healing? What was
well, she would do things that were nasty towards people, um, or she would do things that were, as a child, I could tell it was wrong. I remember one time she showed me a picture of my grandfather who was still alive, but she hated him. She hated everybody. So
hmm,
anyway, I found a picture of him. So she called me and she said, "Oh, see," and she had that scary laugh,
hmm,
nervous, scary laugh. And she took a pair of scissors and then she started cutting him. And
hmm,
she, it was, oh, still thinking of that, I get the shiver in my back because it was, for a child, it was, I didn't know anything, but that didn't seem right. I mean, children still know what's right
right.
and what's wrong. I could feel it was scary. The way she was behaving was very, very scary. So that was, um, and many times she wished somebody something bad, or she did something. She went to bury it in the garden, and she didn't want to tell me what it was, etc. I mean, eh, she she healers can be trained to do good things, but you to have the ones who learn, who have the training and use the power to do bad things. Because if you can create or help good energy, you can also go towards bad energy. So anyway, so I was very scared. Second time, it was about 10 years later. And same thing, he reminded me that I should become a healer. And no, that was with shaman in Korea when I lived there. They they were interested in me. They invited me to join them, etc. And I was very interested in Korean shamanism, but um, I was very scared, so I did not accept. I never answered there. I regretted a little bit, but I didn't feel it was right. And it's only about 10 years later again that I became very, very, very ill. Nobody could understand what it was. And the doctors tried to help me for about 3, 4 months, antibiotics, and I was still ill. I had lung infection, which I never smoked. I stay away from smoke. I never had problem there, and I had mononucleosis. I mean, usually it's a young people.
Right.
So I had that at the same time. I was very sick, and my husband was traveling for work. So I was all alone. I couldn't go see my shaman. And finally, when my husband came back, I went to see him. 5 days later, I was back on track. He told me everything that I had and why.
Hmm.
And I said, this time I am going to become a healer. And then I came to the States a few weeks later, maybe 4 or 5 weeks later. It was December, to visit some friends in Wisconsin. And my friend wanted to take me to visit some towns around the Great Lake that are decorated for Christmas, and it's supposedly very pretty. Well, snowstorm. So she said, well, close by, there is somebody who can read cards for us. I never had that done, but I heard it's very good. Would you like to do that? I said, why not? We went, entered, so very, very tall man looked at me and said, we met already. And I said, well, probably in another lifetime. Never met him. Then he asked both of us to go into his office. He asked my friend to sit on an armchair, me on a couch. He sat on his chair, closed his eyes, and for the next almost 2 hours, told me my entire life
Wow.
since the beginning. I mean, I didn't move. I was so stunned. And he even told me, it's the third time you've been connected. You do not fail now. He said, you've been connected when you were 39 and you were 49, something like that. But you can't fail now.
Hmm.
Does he know these things, about my
Right.
life, etc. So that's when I realized, well, he was connected and guides were telling him what to say.
Right.
So yeah, that's when I went back to Paris. That's when I started. I looked for the healer. I found a shaman right away, and that's how I started. But it was not, an easy path. Become a healer. Like, I want to become a healer. No, no, no.
Right. Yeah.
So sometimes things come to you, signs do come to you. And if you don't see them the first time, they are not quite as subtle the second time.
Right.
And they can be very forceful the third time. In my case, it was. I could not ignore that illness. I was
Right.
flat on my back. Um, so that's interesting. But
But
yeah,
when
so I
you,
became a healer, and my grandmother is long gone now. So
what did
uh,
she, how did she raise your mother?
hmm?
How did your grandmother, was it your mother's, it was your mother's mother,
My father.
your father's mother? Okay.
Yeah,
How did
yeah.
she raise him? Because he was terrible to you too. So it was,
She had 5 kids. He was the only one who was kind to her. The others did not want to talk to her because she was mean. But he was the eldest of the 5. And but to me, yeah, there was never any. It was very difficult. We were so different. I saw him when I was 9 the first time, and he slapped me because I said something he didn't like, and I decided, I'm not calling that man father or papa. No way. Should not behave that way. So it was a difficult. I tried, especially when our son was born, but it was a very difficult situation.
With your relationships, I find that was interesting. And I think that everyone listening will think it's interesting too, on how you wanted you kind of wanted that, right?
Yeah, well, all the young girls, I want to marry a rich man,
Right.
to be a model.
And you were a model too. I mean, you did it all.
Yeah, well, and despite the fact that I'm 5'3", I became a model without knocking at doors.
I
Somebody said, "Oh,
know.
I know somebody," and suddenly I was on stage, and and then phone call, and I was hired, and I was, huh? And the first time I went on stage, I was not sure how to do. I
Right.
followed. I looked. I said, because I never had a training. I had to push a little bit. Yes, I trained some, you know, but it did work. And everything else, most of the things I have tried to do, if I really wanted to do that, I just had to, okay, I'm going to do it. And
Right.
like, I'm 74 now, and my book is doing well. So I'm on your path now. Yay!
Right. Yeah. Oh, I love it.
There is no age. There is
No.
no, just the will to do things. And for me, I have a lot of will because I really want to help people. That's my goal, to ease people's life by doing simple things. You read my exercises, and so if you really want um, to see the signs, to see the synchronicity, to have them help you, there are things you have to change. So that's number one. If you want to change, well, these are some little steps, but it will already make a big dent in your blockages. And
Right.
then some major things, but I'm not a psychiatrist. So but I'm trying to improve the life of the people by offering simple, inexpensive, or free even things to do.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
right there for us.
Right. You talk a lot about, the gratitude and meditating and, nature, listening to the birds. Everything that you wrote, like I said in the beginning, was like everything that I do and that I instill in my children and my students. And, when I see these kids coming into this world now, and the ones that I'm working with, it's like when I start talking to them, thank God they have a conscious parent that sees the need and would like them to knows that they'd probably listen to someone else besides their parent, more. um, but they're at this different level, and I see it in their eyes. They're they're so it's like they're like, as soon as I start talking to them by like week 2, the light comes on, and they're like, "Yes, this is what I've been missing. This is what I really," or I know. It's like a remembering. And then they're just well, sometimes I think these kids at the beginning are going, "Oh, great. What did my mom sign me up for, with this lady that I have to look at on this stupid computer," right? Um, and then it evolves to, I see now, it's been almost 4 years that I see now with these kids, like, um, as soon as they see me listening and hearing them, and they get this connection, and then they're like, they just bloom, and they are ready, like, and it just, nothing is more exciting to me than that. And I know that, you know, my passion, the way I feel about that, like you do, it's like, that's why we're here right now. I just have that knowing of and then when I let go and surrender to knowing that, whoever comes to me will be the perfect person, everything is always like guided, and
Mhm.
all the synchronicities, and that's when I look at life and think, um, I, I can't, like, just how you could show, like in your book, in your story, and how you even um, make your life each step of the way, um, explaining to people, and I probably I said this at the beginning, but you explain what I love is that when you do have a something hard in your life, oh, it's like, look at it as like, what is it in it? What is in it for me? Like there's something beautiful in it because, or, where is it leading me? Like when you say I'm taking these steps and
Mhm.
it's taking me to this amazing thing, and it's all for us, it's all working in this place to grow us and expand us and our soul and our growth in this life. How do you look at life? Like, do you look at like your grandmother and you and your mom and your dad were in a soul family and you decided to, come down together and say, okay, grandmother, you raise me and treat me and abuse me. Mother, you disappear and I think you're dead. And then one day you're not. Dad, I never meet you till do you feel that way? Is that how you look at life? And then
The way I look at life, one time I had a very interesting showing. I was at the Monroe Institute, and you know the Monroe Institute.
yes. And I heard you talking about it. Yes.
Yeah. I was there, and we had an exercise to do. And I'm losing my track. I was thinking of one thing, I went to something else. So we'll come back to that. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're good.
No, that's sorry. It was about, I'm sorry.
You're good.
Ask the question again. I'm
That's
sorry.
no, how do you look at life? Like, how do you
Oh,
see
life.
your
Yes.
souls coming together?
I
Are
was,
you a
I had,
soul?
yes. What I saw in one of the exercises I did, I went into a building. I was in an altered state, of course. I went into a building where I had been before. There was like a tower. Everything was white. There was like a tower. I entered into the tower the first time, and everything was very white inside. And suddenly, my whole body became white, and I was in suspension. And then I felt I was getting in a fetal position. So I thought, am I am I reborn? But that was it. Then a few months later, I was back at the Monroe Institute. I had the same vision, but instead of going inside that tower, I went straight through the main door. And then there was an escalator where everybody around were wearing white clothes, but some were a little bit grayer than some others. All the ones with very white clothes went straight. The ones with grayer uh, robe went through the door I had taken a few months before to go into that tower. So I was very curious. So I elevated myself, and at the very top there was like a belt, moving belt with little lights that would come up from that tower. There was a little opening and little light jumping in, and I could see the little lights, and they were going to a place where I could see. So that when I elevated myself, I could tell that it went down. There was a very wide landscape. I mean, it was like a valley with a lot of um, wells. And they would jump on one side of the well. They would ignore the first one. Maybe they went around too, and then they would oscillate for a bit, and then jump in, and beautiful light would come out of the well.
Hmm.
And I paused and said, "Oh my God, we choose to be reborn, but we choose where."
Hmm.
So that's my impression, that we choose to be reborn. We don't come with people, but we choose to be reborn because we still have things to do
Right.
to reach perfection. And so, I feel that I came back. There were things I had to do, forgiveness. I mean, lots of things I had to work through. And that's why I came back this time. And
Hmm.
then next time we'll see. But that's how I see that. there are many other ways, I'm sure, to seeing how we come back. But that's my vision, that we
Hmm.
choose, we are, and we are offered, and okay, this is where I want to go. We don't come back to be the happiest people, to have a very good life. We come back because we have things to finish. It's an
Right.
unfinished business when we cross over. So we have to come back until we're perfect. Which is
Will
here
we
on
ever be perfect?
I don't think so. Having too
We're,
much fun. Having too much fun.
right. Oh, I love it. We're at the end, Liliane, but what would the 74-year-old Liliane give advice if her 4-year-old self was looking at her? What advice would you
We're
give her?
never alone. We are never alone.
We're never alone.
And I tell that to my granddaughter. We're never alone.
Right.
And I take her around, show this and that, and listen to the wind. Or we go to the beach, look at the waves. Can you hear the waves? And then we dance. So I
And the,
taught her to improvise with nature, not to dance like what she sees, 1, 2, 1, 2. Just listen, listen. Hear the birds? Oh, don't you feel you have wings? And so it's very, very important to remain in touch with our inner child. I think it's one of the keys of aging well, because if we can still be in touch with our inner child, there are lots of truth that we keep. We don't
mm-hmm,
ask any questions. Plus, we're able to have fun like children do. I mean,
mm-hmm.
when I'm here, if we see a puddle while it's raining, even if it's muddy, what do? Both of us, we go and jump.
I watched you. I watched you on Instagram. That was so cute.
Oh, you saw that?
Yes.
Things like that. I
Yes.
think it's very, very important to be spontaneous.
Mm-hmm.
I put that in my book. You know, the, I asked the question: have you ever felt that you wanted to do something, but it's not quite appropriate for adults? Or I use maybe other words, but that's what it meant. I said, just try it and
Right.
see how you feel afterwards. Even if it's okay, I'm a bit too old for that. No, you're never too old, really,
Right.
to
Right.
have you
I
know.
love that. Yes.
So
Oh.
so what I would tell people. It's very, very important to keep the inner child alive,
Mm-hmm.
just to go through life, because with the inner child there is always that you know little bit of fun to have, and see things with a much clearer mind sometimes, because we
Mm-hmm.
make it complicated with all the knowledge we have instead of going straight to whatever we see.
Right.
See,
I love
so
that.
that's very important, and have fun, and we can do that even if life is not always fun, and that's there are times when we have to go through grief and some regular difficulties, but for those that are current, little things, little unpleasant things every day, there are ways we can approach them with imagination. And I give some example, like
Yeah.
when I was in my book, and anybody can do that. Yeah, even going through a CAT scan. That has nobody likes that. So what I usually did was, I'm on a boat, it's warm, the sun is bright. Don't open your eyes ever when you do that.
Right.
Suddenly it starts and boom, 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 boom.
Right.
Oh, boat is starting. We're reaching height. See, oh, I see. Oh, Hawaii, hi. I just, and then I can see a bird and the sun. It's absolutely wonderful. The last time I had a CAT scan, though, it took over an hour, and I was starting to panic. I have to admit. I was starting to have difficulty breathing. I was ready to press the little bell.
Right.
And I said, no, because they're going to have you do the same thing again.
Again. Right.
I said, well, guys, I need help here. Please help. And suddenly I felt surrounded by something warm and soft and pleasant. And I knew it was my guardian angel, and it is Saint Michael for me. I call
Hmm.
that. I'm very much in touch with Saint Michael. And then I heard a voice, Mama Profil, my father. I know he's among my guides now, but he was there.
Oh, I love that.
And I could finish the session, whatever length it was, with no problem. So you see, that's again a very good application. I need help.
Right.
And I
I
got it
always
right
say,
away. I mean, just like that.
right.
So it's wonderful to be able to remember that we're never alone,
Hmm.
and that's my mantra. And what I would like people to remember: we're never alone,
Hmm.
and we always have guardian, guides, an angel, or we can always talk or ask questions. And there are lots of different techniques to get the answer sometimes, but it's something for all of us to remember.
I love
And
that. Thank you. Thank you for letting us remember that because it's so important.
it is.
And what you're here to do is so important too. And writing this book is just part of that. And I think, you give the 74-year-old person, like there's just no age, we're just all on this journey to make magic and share it with everyone. And um, gosh, I'm so grateful to have met you. How can people find you and write and read your book, buy your book?
Well, I'm on Amazon, so it's Liliane Fortna. My book is Wings from Above, and it's available on Audible, e-book, and also paperback. And my website is wingsfromabove.com. And at the end of my website, you have an email address, so you can contact me directly if you would like to, or just send me a message. I'm also on LinkedIn and Facebook, so you can find me there too. And contact me, ask questions. I'll be delighted to answer. And
Oh,
if you sign up for my newsletter, I have so many projects for next year, then I can keep you, um, you know, I can let you know how it develops, and let you know when it will be offered.
nice. Oh, thank you so much. It was so fun to get to know you and what a gift it was to listen to your book the last few days. It's been so
Thank you.
beautiful. Yeah, it's
Thank
a it's a life changer. It definitely I just can see it as a movie. I think it would be a really neat movie.
Somebody else said that
Yeah.
even before it was written, I see an astrologist every year, and she said, "What you're going to write, I see a movie." That's what she told.
Oh, yeah, I do too. Because I see it the way you wrote it, it's so visual. I can see it. Yeah,
Yeah, I like I like to put a lot of imageries because that's always what I have in my mind.
right,
And,
right.
it's very important. But I have also another book that I started before actually, and it's about. Um, it's not written yet. I mean, I'm in the process. It's a quasi biography that will start actually in 1898 when my grandmother was born. And basically, it's a story of people, but the civilian going through wars and how wars affect them, and
Hmm,
how some of them it can destroy them, or some can become extraordinary people because of all the difficulties they had to deal with.
right.
So that, and I would like to stay on the side of women
Hmm,
mostly, how it does affect. So, and there were some very beautiful women. My mother was very, very beautiful, and my grandmother was when she was young, and she was very wealthy at the time, etc. So there is wealth, there is beauty, there is war, of course. There are so many interesting things, that it would be on three continents because I was born in Asia, and of course I grew up in Europe and then the US. So um, that would be. I even had a man who was script who sat with me. He was interested, but at the time I just didn't want to deal with that. That was many years ago, and but it's funny you say that because I heard that before.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
thank you so much. It's been a
and
pleasure. I look forward to seeing where everything goes, wherever your path takes you.
and I want to listen. You have what 100 and almost 80, 79, I think.
Oh, yeah, 100 in the, yeah, I've recorded like in the 180s. Yeah. You'll
Yeah.
be in the 180s.
Oh, I'll be 100. Yeah. So, and when is it going to be published? I mean,
Um, I don't know yet. I have a few in the, I'll keep you updated.
oh yeah, yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome.